the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Yeah, come on. Love my girl. And we're back. Just like the Five Musketeers.
Three Musketeers, isn't it? Well, nobody knows how many there were, really, do they?
You didn't know that the Three Musketeers is a fiction, right? Written by Alexander Dumas.
A lot of people are saying that about the Bible these days.
What, that it was written by Alexander Dumas?
Don't be daft, Steve. It was written by Jesus.
No one here.
Hello? Diane, can you let me in, please?
I'm not sure this is the best time, Shaun.
Oh, come on.
Lizzie doesn't want to see you, Shaun. Go away.
She said if she stayed with me, she'd end up coming in here every night for the rest of her life, like these sad old fuckers, drinking herself to death.
Nicholas, we're offering you a smashing position with a delightful cottage and a lovely little place that I think has won Village of the Year, I don't know how many times. It'll be good for you.
I'm not going to bombard you with cliches, but what I will say is this. It's not the end of the world.
The Home Office has issued a statement urging people to stay in their homes and await further instruction.
Get us back to the station, now!
To everyone who said I
Make no attempt to reach loved ones.
weren't you mistaken?
He knows what he's doing.
Avoid all physical contact.
Greatness. You can't always please the crowd. Still not found and down. This heavy crowd.
What's the matter, David? I'm taking a shortcut before.
The pod bay doors are open. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, Doug Heller, film critic and film historian for TalkMovieToBe.com. And seated next to me at the pub, Jerry Dean Roberts, film critic for ArmchairCinema.com and ArmchairOscars.com. Jerry, how you doing?
Let's have a pint.
Winchester.
Winchester.
Today, basically we're talking about Shaun of the Dead, but we're going to be covering the entire Coronetto Trilogy. Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's brilliant stretch of 3 movies.
And Nick Frost.
Nick Frost, I think he ended up contributing to some of the scripts, but it was Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright that wrote them.
Well, but I mean, all three of these movies are the...
But they need Nick Frost in there. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, which is, in a way, its own horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
A different kind. And The World's End, which is also kind of a horror movie. And that's all for Shocktober, getting a little bit of levity after Diabolique and Repulsion.
Crawl out of the muck and finally talk about something of a little bit of life and comedy. But what I love about these three is basically they're 3 different genres. It's horror, action, and sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't depend on each other.
Right.
They're all thematically the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something in the world is it's a commentary on the world we live in, and there's always going to be and the problems that are plaguing them are caused by problems in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just an outside force.
Well, I'll say that except the fact that the zombie plague is brought on by a meteorite, and in The World's End it's aliens. Alien robots that aren't robots.
What was it?
No bots.
What is it they call them?
No bots.
Squishy Eggman?
Squishy Eggman. So, I think we can talk about all three of them broadly before we kind of get into Shaun of the Dead, because each one of them is so dense, but it feels like there's not much to talk about in all of them, except what happened in them. Uh, but the thing that unites them, and the thing that makes them funny and equally terrifying in their own ways, is how developed the characters are. It's character centric. It's not plot centric.
Right.
There is a basic plot that each one follows. The Shaun of the Dead. Shaun wants to rescue his sort of ex-girlfriend, and get her to safety, and his mother, and from these zombies. And the only place that they think of is this bar that they go to
Right.
every
The
night, the Winchester. Hot Fuzz has an equally,
The Cabal.
the hard-nosed cop meets the kind of lovable goofball, and their combined
Town full of
personalities.
lovable goofballs.
Well, the town is a bunch of murdering bastards, but I'm talking about Nick Frost's character, who brings Nicholas Angel closer to human, and Danny closer to professional.
Right.
Between the two of them, they kind of merge, and really they're one whole person.
Right.
And originally, that Nick Frost's character was written for a woman as a love interest,
Oh, really?
but
Well, in a way, it kind of is.
they recast, but they didn't change much.
Mm.
So they kind of kept it. It ended up being more buddy, but
It works better as a bromance.
yeah, yeah. And the World's End of, I mean, Hot Fuzz is weirdly the most contained, because it's all in this little village.
Yeah.
And it's horrifying, because the chief of police, or the chief inspector, and this neighborhood watch murders anyone who has done anything against the law, so that there's not a police report. So it looks great on paper, but there's this like sewer full of bodies,
Right.
of children, and gypsies, and police officers, and
We want to be Village of the Year. Something
right,
like that.
this nonsense contest of Village of the Year. And the first year, they Sanford didn't win it, and the chief inspector's wife played brilliantly by Academy Award winner Jim Broadbent. Goes off the deep end, and decides to clean up the town by having a murder cult.
Yeah.
Of anybody who strays from the straight and narrow, and they just write them off as accidents when it's a high profile, when people will be missed. So, oh, we had an accident.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a murder in Sanford in 20 years, but it's the accident capital of like the world.
But it's written as something else. Well, let's talk about Shaun of the Dead first, because
I love this movie.
I actually saw this. I actually saw this for the first time. Let me explain. I saw World's End in the theater.
I didn't.
Then I saw Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz with a lot of distractions.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really say that I can say that I sat down and tried, but I can't say that I sat through all. So this essentially is the first time I sat through Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. Shaun of the Dead was surprising, because while it's a very funny movie, it's not a sit down, laugh out loud. It's not Blazing Saddles.
No, and it's so heartfelt in places, and
And very
it's a
cultural.
yeah, and it's a very genuine portrait of people before the zombies. This could have been a good relationship comedy.
Right.
But then you add the zombies and it becomes something wholly different.
Yeah.
And Shaun is this slacker. He's working at an electronics store.
Yeah, he's working
like
kind of like a Best Buy.
Right, or a local kind of a shop that exists in England, but not really over here. And it's kind of a dead end job. He's, I think, at that point pushing 40.
Okay, let me tell you this. I looked this up last night. As I'm watching, all three of these, the connecting tissue is they both star Nick Frost and Simon Pegg.
Right, and are directed by Edgar Wright.
Who, in all three films, play guys who are in their late 30s, early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting was, I'm like, why do I kind of identify with these guys a little bit? And it's because Simon Pegg was born in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
Frost was born in 72. I dropped right between them. I was born in 71. So I'm like, I'm the same age as these guys.
Yeah.
So I kind of get it.
And I love that they don't both play the same characters in each of the movies.
Yeah, in Shaun of the Dead and World's End, they switch roles.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, at least in Shaun of the Dead, both of them are kind of slackers.
Right.
And Shaun, the Simon Pegg character, kind of gets his life together as a result of this zombie plague.
Right.
He takes charge. He finds himself. And Hot Fuzz, he's the dead serious, never crack a smile.
That's actually
by
my
the book.
favorite of the three that he played. That's
Mine,
actually my favorite.
mine too. And Nick Frost is the goofy, lovable dummy.
Well,
And then in World's End, it's they juxtapose both of those two Hot Fuzz characters and give it to the other one.
It's an addiction. If you talk about Shaun of the Dead, you talk about these two characters. I forget the name of the Nick Frost character, but there's sort of this addiction to wanting to have this sort of arrested development.
Right.
In the sense that they're in their 30s and their 40s and they should be trying to grow up and do other things, but they still are stuck in what they were doing when they were 18.
Right.
And the
Ed
is fully addicted to this. He's sitting on the couch. He's playing video games. He's giving into, here it is, the zombie lifestyle.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing, shuffling here and there, not really doing anything. Shaun is trying.
Mm-hmm.
It's not there, but he's trying. He has a job.
He has a job. He has a long-term girlfriend. He's on the surface, he's doing what he sort of should be doing,
Mm-hmm.
but underneath that, he just wants to hang out with his best friend
And drink.
and drink and drink and drink.
They want to go to the same pub.
Drink and drink and drink. Yeah, they go to the same pub night after night after night, and it's basically the two of them are dating Liz,
Right.
more or less. And you feel really bad for her.
Yeah.
Because she sees that Shaun has some kind of potential, and she wants him to blossom,
If
and
he
she
could
wants to help
unchain
him.
himself from Ed,
Right.
because Ed is just holding him down.
Mm-hmm.
What I took from this, the larger story, is the idea of nesting in a place where we're comfortable. We don't like being taken out of our comfort zones.
Right.
You get up, you get something to eat, you get on the computer, and you get ready for work. You go to work, and then you come home, you watch a little television, you go to bed. People like that routine.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like it when something throws that off.
Right. And the funny thing is, this Shaun of the Dead kind of predicted where we would be. This was what, 3 years before the iPhone came out?
Yeah.
And this is how many people would represent the smartphone revolution everybody became zombies, everybody staring into the hypnotic eye, as Tom Petty called phones.
That commercial, that famous commercial for Macintosh.
Yeah.
Where all the people are sitting in that gray theater, and it's and then the lady comes along with the hammer and she throws. We've become those people.
Yeah.
That future happened, essentially. We shall prevail. That actually happened. This.
Yeah.
The iPhone culture, the video game culture, the Starbucks culture has happened.
Yeah. And, even as things changed so radically, it was so easy to become complacent within the new scope of what was happening. And this foreshadows a future problem that we'll have from this movie. But, even at the time in 2004, the people were using more text and doing that on the job and in the car, and then it was even more dangerous because you had to hit one button 17 times just to get an S.
Yeah.
Well, lowercase s anyway. On those damn Nokias. That will outlast us all. They are indestructible.
They with a flip phone. I'm like, how do you?
I
still have the little antenna.
I mean, unless it's a burner, I don't get it. I don't. If they don't have mistresses or drug deals to take care of, I don't really know why people still have the flip phones.
Right. Right. But it was interesting how he seems to walk around with the blinders on.
Mm-hmm.
He gets up out of bed and he goes across the street to the convenience store. And as he walks across the street, there are zombies on the sidewalk.
Right. This is like the day after, like they're and he doesn't even notice it because he is basically one of them.
Yeah.
In spirit. When he gets up, he's stumbling into his slippers and down the hall, and he's just not looking.
Right.
And
there are things going on in his life. What I love about this is that if you have a typical zombie movie and you have the hero in the middle of it, the hero does not have a life.
Right.
Get up out of bed and then all of a sudden they're, they walk around and they see the zombies, and then it goes from there. He has problems. His girlfriend's about to leave him. He's got a problem with his mom. He's got what is it, her birthday?
Yeah, it's her birthday. He doesn't like his stepfather, who had basically raised him because he's been there since Shaun was like 8.
Played by Bill Nye.
Bill Nye.
Yeah. Who,
Spectacularly by Bill Nye. Oh my gosh.
I think he's in all three of these.
He is. He is the stepfather in this. He is the chief inspector of in London in a brief part in Hot Fuzz, a great part in Hot Fuzz, and he's the voice at the end of the World's End.
The big voice in the sky.
Right.
He actually is Bill Nye. He is the man behind one of my favorite villains, Davy Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I love the character Davy Jones. That character, I remember when I saw Dead Man's Chest, I was like, this character is just so fascinating to look at.
Right. The movie's terrible.
The movie's terrible, but the character's interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just, there's this microcosm of a life taking place, and all the issues he's got to deal with. His girlfriend doesn't like Ed because Ed doesn't do anything, and Ed is the cause of all of his issues, all of his man-child issues. All of these movies are about man-child issues, but she wants him to cut him loose, but it's hard to do that because they've been friends.
They've been friends for so many years.
Yeah, they were probably friends since high school.
Right. Grammar school, I think.
But Ed had never had any ambition to go anywhere. We see him, and he looks like a slob.
Well, yeah.
Well, he is a slob, but
yeah.
Then this zombie thing happens. What's terrifying to me, and we'll talk more about this in our last episode for Shocktober. The zombies are inherently terrible for one particular reason. There are more of them than there are of you.
Yeah. That's always the big problem. As my mother-in-law's brother apparently used to say, I never got to meet the man, but he used to say that there are more dead people now than there ever have been in the history of the world.
Right.
And when you stop and think about it, you're like, oh crap, that's true. And it's...
And how do you kill something that's already dead?
Well, you gotta destroy its brain, like the newscaster. It's like when he's recounting, these are words that I never thought that I would say.
My favorite zombie movie of all time is The Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Which is essentially that. It's somebody says, how do you kill something that's already dead? And you realize the idea of a zombie is not that the brain is still alive. The idea is the flesh is alive. Well, no matter how much you cut it up, it can still come and kill you. And it's a terrifying idea.
Oh yeah.
It's a terrifying concept, and I think that it's an interesting commentary on society as a whole, and it rarely ever has a happy ending. This movie doesn't have a happy ending.
No, and there's some real
ending, but it doesn't have a happy ending.
Right. It has some real tragedy. Like I love the plan. Whenever they go over the plan.
Yeah.
Like we take Pete's car, we drive over to Mom's, we go in, take care of Philip. I'm so sorry, Philip. And we grab Mom, go over to Liz's place, hole up, have a cup of tea, and wait for this whole thing to blow over. Okay. We take Pete's car, we go around Mom's, we go in, deal with Philip. Sorry, Philip. Grab Mom, go to Liz's, pick her up, bring her back here, have a cup of tea, and wait for all this to blow over. No, we can't bring her back here. Take car, go to Mom's, kill Phil. Sorry. Grab Liz, go to the Winchester, have a nice cold pint, and wait for all this to blow over. How's that for a slice of fried gold? I mean...
It's all based...
But it all visualizes it. You know, it's not just him saying it. You see these scenarios, and each time he gets less and less sorry for having to bash his stepfather's head in with a cricket bat.
And it's all based on not wanting to break away from this pub mentality, this trajectory of the pub. And it's like, okay, you have a Jaguar. Get in it and keep driving. Because he has some excuse that he is going to go to the Winchester because it has heavy doors. But I'm thinking, okay, no, that's not going to work.
But it's got all these windows, and then when they get there, they're like, but look at all these windows. They can just break in. There's all this. This is not a defensible position. What did you think about? Why did you come here? Well, because there's a gun over the bar. That doesn't work.
Actually, it does, but
it does, but they didn't know that. So it's.
I'm gonna say this, and this is not a slight against this film, but it's a slight against recent zombie movies in general. Is the fact that I don't like the zombie virus idea because they're not vampires. I mean, I think it's actually just scarier when it's just dead people, like it was in Night of the Living Dead or Return of the Living Dead. You know, they're not gonna. If they bite you, they're not, you'll become a zombie. I don't even know how that works. But
well, I understand the virus concept.
It's a good device.
It's a good way to explain why this is happening.
Right.
Like you know, there's some virus and it takes you over and it reanimates your corpse, and you know, the same could be for like a parasite. There was a storyline in Star Wars: The Clone Wars where the Geonosians have these little brain worms that go up your nose and wrap around, kind of like the Ceti Alpha 6 creature in Star Trek. Yeah, and they were defeated by cold. If it got too cold, then they came out and you could kill them. But you know, they would take over corpses. So like you're cutting away at the corpses with your lightsaber, shooting them, and they're still coming at you because
they're worms.
They're worms around a brainstem. If the brainstem is still active, they can keep moving the body.
Yeah.
So I get that, and it's a way of saying this is why this would happen. Right. Because so many people would be like, well, why hasn't it happened before if it happened now? But the virus thing only works if you were alive and then get killed with it. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't reanimate corpses that were buried.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to get underground.
Right. Well, I mean, in Night of the Living Dead, it did.
Right.
You know, and in Return of the Living Dead, it did. They were coming out of the ground. Mm-hmm. But people were still bitten, and you know. But it's an interesting idea because I'm thinking, okay, even in the zombie apocalypse, Shaun and Ed cannot get themselves out of their comfort zone.
They can't move away from what they know. Yeah, exactly.
And it's like pack people into this car, into Phil's car, and drive away. You know, keep driving.
The funnier part of that is it's really indicative of Shaun's character because he is literally trying to take everything he has and consolidate it without changing anything but protecting.
Right.
It's like it's exactly what he always has done. He keeps every aspect of every part of his life close at hand. Doesn't want to change, but doesn't want.
It's almost like people are pulling him away from this, but he's kind of holding on to it. You know, and it's
right. It's like he wants to move away from the old ways without sacrificing them, and bring them into the new life that he should have.
Right. And the idea is that he keeps saying that wait till this whole thing blows over. Well, how do you know it's going to blow over?
You don't.
You don't. And boy, the army takes its time getting there.
Right?
That's the last third of the movie. You know, it took
It's
them,
the last third. It's the last 10
it
minutes.
took them a while to get to get mobilized. It's,
You know,
I mean, maybe they didn't get up to where they are. I mean, it's because they had to fight their way up there. But it's a good movie. I like it. I'm a little ambivalent about the ending. I like the ending. Um,
I think it's fun that he keeps Ed even after he's been turned.
I don't know. I didn't know how to feel about that.
The first time I saw it, I'm like, well, that's a little odd, but it's still, he's he's moving on, but he's able to keep a little bit of his past out in the shed, in the garden, and
Well, in
he
all
doesn't have to give everything up, but he's got enough to be able to comfortably move forward and not feel bad about leaving anyone behind.
in all three of these films, the thread at the end is you've been through the worst horror of your life, but you essentially learned nothing. Your circumstances have changed, but you haven't learned anything really.
I think Hot Fuzz, they actually come out of that different people, and
Yeah, they do come out different people, but in the other two, essentially they're still the same. They're still holding on to
yeah.
whatever they had when they were,
Oh yeah.
whatever they
I
had
mean,
before.
especially The World's End.
Because both films, both The World's End and Shaun of the Dead, end with a world that has been decimated. It's a dystopian world at the end of it that they've learned how to be comfortable in.
But I love the fact that once they got the hordes under control, they started putting the undead to work,
As sort of
like
industry.
returning trolleys, and it's absolutely hilarious. That they were like, oh yeah, we'll try to make it work.
Yeah, we'll fix it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, well, let's move on to Hot Fuzz. I
Yes.
saw this for the first time last night. Really able
It's
to sit.
so good. It is so good.
The first time I saw this, I saw it on a Saturday after I had seen 5 other movies,
Right.
and there were things going on in my world I could not concentrate on it. But last night I sat down and watched this. I really like this one.
I saw this twice in the theater.
Um, I saw World's End twice in the theater. I love that movie. But this one, I have to tell you, I did not know anything about it.
Okay.
I'd been able to concentrate maybe on the first 15 minutes, and that was about it. But I did not know. And all three of these, if you go in not knowing anything about it, all the better.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Especially the last two, because in this one, you're not 100% sure where it's going. Because
No, from minute to minute, you don't know.
this, plot-wise, this one may be the best.
Oh, absolutely.
Because essentially, this is based on kind of culling together the old uh, Joel Silver and what's his name,
Jerry Bruckheimer
Bruckheimer, Silver Bruckheimer films, and they were all
or Don Simpson.
Don Simpson, those old action films from the 80s and 90s, and you meet this cop. I love his name, Nick Angel.
Yeah.
He is a straight arrow cop played by Simon Pegg with this absolutely deadpan look on his face.
I mean, the only other person in the world who had such a deadpan it was Buster Keaton. Like
Right.
nothing moves.
Keep that focused. Keeps this focused. Like, he's the best cop in the world.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if he got if Simon Pegg didn't get some pointers in this from Timothy Dalton.
That was an awesome. Actually, this and The World's End both have former Bonds.
Mm-hmm. Timothy Dalton is in this movie.
Timothy Dalton is in this one, and Pierce Brosnan
Mm-hmm.
is in The World's End.
But they introduce him at the beginning as like the greatest cop in the world. He's like every single thing, every area of law enforcement. He is top notch.
Right, and he was wounded in the line of duty, most recently of being stabbed in the hand by Father Christmas.
A guy dressed as Santa Claus.
The picture of that happening, the guy playing Santa is Academy Award-winning director Peter Jackson.
Is it? I didn't notice
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So there are 2 Oscar winners in this.
Yes, there are.
Yeah, there's Jim Broadbent.
Yes.
But what's interesting is he's so good at his job that they don't want him in London.
Right, because he's making everybody else look bad.
He's making him
This was great. When you watch these very close together, you get to see the evolution of Martin Freeman's career.
Yeah.
Because in Shaun of the Dead, he is seen in one scene as a guy that was a mirror image of one of the other guys in Shaun's group.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah. The second one, the part is a little bigger, and then the third one, he's one.
Yeah, he's a sergeant in the Met, and then in the third one, he's a main character.
Right.
It's fascinating to see how he grew from bit part cameo non-speaking or one line, and I think it was hello, to this small part, but this very memorable part in Hot Fuzz, and then starring in The World's End, which was a year after The Hobbit?
Oh, same year, I think. Because The World's End was in 2013.
Yeah.
So it may have been a year. Yeah.
I'll say The Hobbit was 2012. The first one was. So
it's like he's got this.
And then Steve Coogan shows up as the captain.
And Bill Nighy shows up
as the chief inspector, and basically he's the only one that says what the issue is, because they're like, we're giving you a sergeant's position in Sanford, Gloucestershire.
Yeah.
It's like way out in the country, and he's mad. He wants to stay as a PC in the Met, and then Coogan, who's the captain, he's like, no, you don't have a say in this. And he goes, well, I want to take this higher. And he goes, you want to go all the way up to the chief inspector? And he's about to pick up the phone, and he calls him in, and he's already there because they expected this. And he walks in, all right, keep your seat. Look, the fact of the matter is you're making us all look bad.
Because he's too good at his job.
Because his arrest rate is 400% higher than every other officer.
And you get the feeling that it's the reason they're doing this is because they want to be complacent and they don't want a guy like this to make them look bad. It's like,
well, or they don't want to be held to his standard and have to do everything that he's doing.
They don't actually have to do the work to be better.
Right. So they get rid of the best police officer instead of coming up to his level.
And send him to what would seem to be the most boring jurisdiction, or the most boring precinct. You know, this little town called Sanford, kind of this little Mayberry town where nothing seems to happen.
There hasn't been a recorded murder in 20 years,
well,
and
they find out why. But
a recorded
when he gets there, he finds out there is no discipline in the police department. Everybody's buddies. They're all friendly and nice, and everybody's
And kind of dumb.
and kind of dumb. I love the scene where I love the scene where the inspector shows Nick around the police department, and he opens the
Yeah.
evidence room, or he opens the weapons room, and all the helmets and riot gear have got cobwebs on because nobody's ever used them.
And there's mice crawling around them.
And they open the evidence room, and there's nothing there.
There's nothing there.
You
And
know?
then when they go into the main room, and this is Sergeant Fisher, and he looks, he goes, "What?" And he has this dumb look on his face, and there's a whiteboard behind him that was obviously part of some presentation, but it says like lazy, always late, and all this, and they all end up pointing directly to his head. And if you pause it and read all of them, it's hilarious.
But he is shocked by this because he can't believe how laid back they all are, and they are. They're not taking anything seriously, and you would think that it's because they don't have a lot of crime. No, it's because they create an environment in which they don't have a lot of crime.
Right, but the police force is completely oblivious to this, other than
Right.
Frank, who is the chief of police, who is running this little murder cult.
And Nick is the kind of guy, he's a little like Grissom on CSI. He can look at something and just the pieces, he can put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Right, he's like, there's something not right here.
He on his first night on the job, and you know he gets off work and they go to the pub, and he looks at like 4 or 5 different tables, and every one of them are kids.
That was the night that he arrived.
That's the night that
And
he arrived.
he brings all these people in, and the sergeant was like, "Hi, who are you then?" "Sergeant Angel." "Oh, where did you start?" "Tomorrow."
He showed up early. But you have to say, this is all done under a countenance by Simon Pegg that is absolutely brilliant because the face is so focused and tight.
It is just tight, and everything he does relates back to being a cop. He has an interaction. Actually, there's 3 Academy Award winners in this movie. Kate Blanchett.
Oh, that's right. She plays
is
Janine.
Unseen. She's covered up. She's one of the most beautiful women in the world, and you don't see her face.
They're doing this. He calls her.
She's a CSI
right.
scientist. And she's in full body so as not to contaminate the scene.
Right.
And they have this whole scene where she's covered up, and she like rips off her protective glasses, and you get to see her eyes, but it's her voice and it's her in that suit, but you never see her face. And one of my favorite line deliveries, I've seen this movie, I know this movie by heart, when they're there,
I eventually will.
And he's like, what is it Bob? And she's like, "Does Bob look like somebody I would go out with?" And they're all in these full body.
They're in these white suits,
paper
these
suits,
white coveralls with the masks and the hoods on.
And she's like, "No, it's Dave." And he goes, "Hello there." And then throughout all of this, right at the end of it, he goes, "You do realize that window was broken from the inside?" And everybody goes, "Huh?"
Yeah. Everybody looks.
And then it cuts. It's like they are the people who are supposed to be, know everything about this crime scene, and he's just there on the other side of the room.
Not in coveralls.
Not in cover, and he makes this observation.
And that's the end scene. Like
right. It just cuts.
But,
and
yeah. He
the crossword puzzle with the woman at the hotel.
Oh, Billy Whitlock. Yeah, she's no longer with us. Horror fans will recognize her. She played the nanny in The Omen.
Yeah,
the one that hung herself. It's all for you. That's her.
Uh-huh.
Oh, but
I love how they're like, oh, we have semi-professionals waiting in the wings of our theater company. We have one person was a cadaver on Prime Suspect, and these two were extras in Straw Dogs. It's 2007. That was 1972, 1971, and uh, I love the callback to Straw. If you've seen Straw Dogs, you know at the end of it.
not the remake.
No. Dustin Hoffman takes a bear trap and slams it on a guy's head.
Yeah.
And they end up shooting an open bear trap onto the saloon keeper's head in the end shootout.
Right.
If you've seen it, you know that they're calling back to the constant 3 or 4 times referenced Straw Dogs.
Right. Can we talk about Romeo and Juliet?
Absolutely.
There's this moment when he pulls over a guy and his girlfriend, and they're sitting there in the car, and he's
The town solicitor.
and he was doing 48 and a 35, and his excuse was, "You'll have to excuse me. I'm on my way to an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet."
An homage.
An homage.
I am playing the eponymous hero. And the man is like 50.
And you see the production, and the production just at first looks like community theater. It just,
Yeah, but what they did was they adapted Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and
Right.
Juliet
That's why
to
she
the
has wings.
stage.
Which is why Juliet has wings.
And at the end of it, they're, love me, say that you love me. And I just...
The look on Simon Pegg's face.
Just the absolute abject horror. And that great line where he's, the kiss at the end was the most convincing acting. The only convincing part in the whole play, and it's because the two are lovers.
And they mention that
he's
twice.
cheating on his wife, yeah. And I love the one where they explain why they killed him, and they're like, well, he murdered Bill Shakespeare. He goes, what? Oh.
Oh. Well, it sidelines into a plot about a guy in a hood. A guy in a hood who is murdering people, and not just murdering people. It is nasty.
There is some gruesome stuff, and
The guy who gets
the
the
swearing
mason
alone would get this an R rating, but then they just go that extra step with the gore, with the gargoyle smashing into his head.
It doesn't smash into his head; it destroys his head
and plants in his neck, into his torso, like basically replacing his head. It's horrifying. And then the Leslie Tiller that gets killed with her gardening shears.
Yeah.
Stabbed into her neck, and it's spraying all over the place. And the two get decapitated, and he's like, why are there no skid marks, and who's being immature now? Like, they didn't apply the brakes. Do you mean to tell me that they wouldn't have even tried to save their lives?
Well, then it comes down to like you say, it comes down to this community effort.
Yeah.
Essentially, to get rid of anybody who is essentially doing anything wrong.
And whoever isn't in on it is unaware of it entirely.
Yeah.
And they think that the police force is just good enough at getting the criminals to clear out.
Right.
And
I love Timothy Dalton playing crazy.
Oh man, he is awesome in this movie.
He's so good. I wish he did more movies.
I know.
But he does. It reminded me, and he plays a good villain because I remember him in The Rocketeer.
Yeah.
I remember him in The Rocketeer. He was really, really good. And but here you could just feel this insanity under the surface, and it's like.
I love it, and your introduction to him He's running. Nicholas Angel is running, exercising through town in workout shorts and a polo shirt. I might add a fully buttoned up polo shirt. And Timothy Dalton runs up and he goes, "Lock me up. I'm a slasher." "What? Of prices? I'm the owner of this local supermarché. Why don't you..."
I love it.
And he's a fun runner, they call it. It's like... The whole thing is just absolutely marvelous. And,
it is, but it gets gory and really, I mean, they start dumping the bodies in the sewer, and it's just
yeah,
like,
it's... And there's a great part with David Bradley, whom most people will know as Filch from the Harry Potter movies.
Yes, they go into
but
his...
he also plays the first Doctor in a couple of Doctor Who things. He reprises, he goes in because he looks just like William Hartnell when they do his hair right.
Well,
they go to his house because what did he chop down a tree or chop down some shrubbery or something?
Chop down a tree in somebody else's yard.
Because he didn't like it, but nobody can understand him.
Right, when he talks, his accent is so thick you can't understand it, but they can.
Well, there's one guy that can understand him. So when David Bradley's character, then the old guy, and then it translates back over to Danny, who goes, "Well, it was just in the way, wasn't it?" So it's like this triple translation has my favorite line delivery of the whole thing. When it goes, "Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose. Yes, I suppose." I adore it. I
love
adore
the
it.
scene where they go into his home and they say, "You have a gun?"
And there's...
He says, "I have several guns."
"Do you have a permit for that?" Because he's holding a shotgun. He goes, "Do you have a permit for that?" "This one. Yes, this one." He does for this one. What do you mean, this one?
They go
into his barn, and he has hundreds of guns and a sea mine.
It's a sea mine. It's literally...
They're like, "What is it?" "It's a sea mine." "Sea mine! It's deactivated!"
Literally one of those things under the water on a chain. It's
with the spikes.
The spikes.
That you...
But
so they take all of that in and put it into the...
Prepper,
I mean... He would die long before he would get off at least 5 of those guns. Like... Yeah. Hilarious.
It just,
and then that all factors into... Yeah, sea mine. No, I think it's deactivated. And then they bring it all in. And they end up... That's how Nicholas gets his arsenal for the end gunfight.
And the sea mine is the one that ends up taking out the police station.
Yeah, yeah. It's... This movie is hilarious, and it's brilliant, and it's just as the Shaun of the Dead parts that are seriously touching are when Philip turns and when poor Shaun has to kill his mother.
Yeah.
Played by the woman who played... let's see, she was the cousin on Downton Abbey. The nurse or the doctor.
Wonderful actor.
Right, and she also played Harriet Jones, former Prime Minister, on Doctor Who, back in the David Tennant days.
Yeah.
And always made it a point of saying, "Harriet Jones, Prime Minister?" And they're like, "Yeah, we know who you are."
I gotta get her name because she was so good.
She's always good in like everything, and when he has to kill her.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing about it.
It's heartbreaking.
Is that it has to happen.
Right, and it's all set up.
Penelope Wilton.
Yeah.
She has the funniest line in that movie. It's when they're trying to walk through the zombies and they're trying to practice how to get.
Oh yeah, when she's like, "Oh, that's perfect." He goes, she's like, "What? Oh, I was miles away."
Miles away. Because they cut to her and she has this look on her face and she's just, she's just.
Perfect, Barbara. What?
I'm sorry, dear, it's miles away. But no, Hot Fuzz just.
It's up and down.
Love this movie.
It's. I think it might be Edgar Wright's best picture.
You think so?
It's my favorite.
I'll tell you what's my favorite.
The World's End.
The World's End. I said this was the first one I saw.
Now, see, I saw these as they more or less came out. I saw Shaun of the Dead on DVD in like maybe 2005. I saw Hot Fuzz in the theater, and it took me probably a year and a half or 2 years to finally get around to The World's End. Not because I didn't want to see it, but because I just didn't get around to it. And when I finally watched it, I think I'd gotten the disc from Netflix. Absolutely loved it, but ended up I was watching it by myself. For whatever reason, my wife either was working overnight or something was going on that I had to watch it by myself. And so this time I sat down with her and I rewatched it and she watched it for the first time.
This was my outlaw, off the cuff, cavalier entry on my 10 best list that year. I think it may have been number 10.
I can see that.
But
I always leave number 10 for like the movie that I thought was like the most fun, well made, but really isn't going to go up to number 1.
And isn't going to show up on anybody else's list.
Right,
That's
yeah.
why I say
yeah.
your sort of outlaw choice.
Yeah.
The one that everybody else just thought, or that anybody else would look at your list and think, really? It's the
that's
one
on there, and then people go, I really did like that one a lot.
Because there are choices that you're almost required to have on your list. Moonlight, you're almost required to have it on your list, but you have it because it was so good.
It was, yeah. It was.
Nobody else would have World's End on their list, but I did. I love this movie to death. I own the Steelbook. This was the first Steelbook I ever bought. And one thing I should tell you, I own the DVD and of both Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. One of the problems I have with both the DVDs, they don't have subtitles.
Yours don't?
They don't. The DVDs do not have subtitles, or they weren't available.
My DVDs do.
They don't. They were. I don't know why. It just says operation, not, whatever.
Huh.
But these.
My copies do, but mine were like the original copies from like 2004 and 2007.
These were the ones that needed subtitles.
Yeah.
Because the accents are so thick. But The World's End, I thought worked beautifully as a movie.
It's so, yeah.
Of the idea, and it's flip flopping the relationship from Shaun of the Dead, in that
Hot Fuzz.
Well, flip flopping the relationship, the roles.
From Hot Fuzz, because Nick Frost is the serious.
Well, in that one, in Shaun of the Dead, Nick Frost was the slob.
Right, and Shaun was also a slacker slob.
But he was more responsible. Here, that role.
But he was hard edged. He was like hard nosed in Hot Fuzz, kind of like Andy in.
Here, the Ed role is essentially occupied by Simon Pegg, who plays
absolutely.
Gary the King, who is
a hopeless alcoholic,
mid to late 30s, and he is fixated on this thing that happened 25 years ago. They
try to do a pub crawl.
They try to do a pub crawl. I'll get into
on all 13 pubs in this, what they call the Golden Mile of this little town.
And he's fixated on it, but because they never finished it.
Right, they didn't get to finish it.
Now, I've
and the
gotta
last one on the crawl is a pub called
The World's End.
The World's End.
Now, I've got to say, the pubs that they meet along the way, the names of the pubs sound like designer dildos.
Yeah,
The Two-Headed Dog.
Yeah.
The Good Companion.
Yeah.
What was that one? The Famous Cock.
Well, yeah, that one.
The Old Familiar.
Right. Yeah.
The Hole in the Wall.
Uh-huh.
Even, what was it? The Trusty Servant.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Let's see. I've got them right here. It's The First Post, The Old Familiar, The Famous Cock, The Cross Hands, The Good Companions, The Trusty Servant, The Two-Headed Dog, The Mermaid, The Beehive, The King's Head, The Hole in the Wall, and, of course, The World's End.
The World's End.
And each one has a different meaning. It's like each one has a different meaning. But to get there, we get into this plot about how he is trying to get his buddies back from is trying to get back together with his buddies who want nothing to do with him.
Right, because he has not grown up, and all of them have. They all have good jobs.
Yeah, there's one of them's Oliver, that's the Martin Freeman character, who is I think he's in real estate.
Yeah, he's a real estate.
So he's always got a
Bluetooth headset in his ear.
Steven, he's got he's an architect.
Right, who was played by the guy that played Detective Sergeant Andy in Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
Sans mustache this time.
Yeah.
You've got a mustache.
I
know.
And then Peter, who was just horribly bullied as a child, played by Eddie Marsan, who looks like the meanest guy you would ever meet in your life. He has this hard look. He's played villains before.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's his BFF, who is Andy, who got tired of the whole thing. He's not a recovering alcoholic. He just gave it up.
He gave it up because of a specific incident.
Right. That was really
there was an accident that Gary got them into. Andy was severely injured, and Gary just ran away.
Yeah.
And Andy just didn't want anything to do with him after that. Understandably so. But I love that this crisis brings them back together, even temporarily.
This is the one of these three movies with the densest, with the best story going on.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I always say the best characters are the ones you feel have a history.
Yeah.
And but they don't really want anything to do with Gary because Gary's a loser.
Yes, he is.
He's fixated on something that's so silly and stupid. He's fixated on this miracle mile, this golden mile, and
that none of them care about.
None of them
except
really care
him.
about. And he's still dressed like 90s
he dresses
style.
exactly like how he did his senior year of high school.
Sisters of Mercy T-shirt and the matching tattoo. And
black full-length raincoat.
Yeah, he's still driving the same car. And
not the same kind of car.
But the same
car that he was sold in, what, 1990?
Yeah.
89?
It's the same freaking car.
The Beast.
The Beast. But he thinks that everybody else should be on board with this. And they're not.
Right, he doesn't understand why they wouldn't want to go back and complete this thing. And you learn about this pub crawl. You see Gary in a group therapy, but you don't know why.
Yeah.
You assume that it's probably some kind of an addicts anonymous or alcoholic or something.
Mm-hmm.
But considering that he in no way is on any kind of wagon,
No.
you question what it is. The reveal makes him so sympathetic and sad.
Yeah.
That he had tried to kill himself.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Why are you so obsessed with this?" He goes, "Because it's all I have."
Yeah. This may be the best written because this story could be a movie on its own.
Yeah.
Just this little, it could be a drama on its
Without the no-bots, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing with Shaun of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been a great relationship romantic comedy without the zombies, but with the zombies, with the no-bots,
You know what
it's
they
that
remind me
much.
of? They remind me a little bit of Buffy. In that you
Yeah.
have this supernatural element that you just have to learn to live with.
Right, that you don't really need, but it does nothing but enhance the story.
And it relates to the world you live in.
Right.
And I love that about all three of these. It's just it's an element that comes
Yeah.
in. What I am surprised by in this, and I was surprised when I saw it the first time because I saw this, as I say, twice in the theater. There's a robot invasion.
They're not robots.
Well, it's sort of like a body snatchers kind of thing.
They'll make a point of telling you that they are not robots because the word robot comes from a Dutch word that was for slave, and they're not slaves.
But they, what I was amazed by is that the invasion plot, this story backs into that plot.
Oh yeah.
Because he's in the pub. By the way, he does finally get Andy to go out with him, to go to the pub with him, and Andy orders tap water.
Right. What?
This movie, and I think all of them really, have this. Edgar Wright has this absolutely glorious love for close-up shots of beer going in the glass.
Oh yeah, because all three of these.
It's like a beer commercial.
It is, and it's funny that it's not some sort of a. They call it the Cornetto Trilogy.
So I thought Cornetto was ice cream.
It is.
Okay.
Because it's very nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
Shaun of the Dead. Shaun says to Ed, "Do you want anything from the shop?" And he goes, "Cornetto."
Yeah.
That's the only time it's mentioned. In Hot Fuzz, there are two occasions wherein they are eating the Cornettos in the squad car.
Yeah.
And in The World's End, at the very, 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 very end, when Andy is recounting what happened after the pulse knocked out all the electronics, he's standing at a fence and he says, "I honestly can't remember what any processed food tastes like, mostly." And you see him on a fence, and this Cornetto wrapper hits the fence, and he looks at it kind of longingly.
Yeah.
That's the only... It's so fleeting. I love that they decided to call it the Coronetto Trilogy, because if you're not English, you don't know what it is, and if you're not paying attention, you have no idea why.
Right. Well, see, now that I've seen all three of them, it does tie together.
Yeah.
What I'm amazed by is that it does, like I say, it backs into. because they go to the pub again. He orders tap water, and he's sitting there and he's drinking it. He's just like enjoying it,
Yeah.
like just kind of in Gary's
He's
face.
enjoying the fact that Gary hates the fact that he's drinking water in a bar. Bars are central to all three of these movies.
Yes.
Pubs are.
But there's one point where Gary goes to the restroom, and he's standing there. There's this kid. Sort of has this.
This is after he brings shots to the table. That's important.
Right. And he's standing there, and he's talking to this kid, and he says something, and the kid doesn't say anything. And he touches him, and the kid falls over, and his head smashes on the floor. And it's like, but it's not blood. It's like,
it's blue goo.
if you ever remember when your Stretch Armstrong broke,
Yeah.
it's that stuff. It looks like detergent.
Or for people of my generation, your Nickelodeon gack.
Yeah, and it's blue. It looks like detergent.
Yeah.
And that's when the alien part starts. And it's funny because up until this point, there is never any indication of this at all.
Right. And then when there's sort of hints, because each of the pubs have been basically remade to look exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And people don't remember some of them, but you think that's only because Gary has an inflated concept of who he was in this town.
Right.
So you don't really think that much of it.
He gives himself the nickname the King.
Right, because his last name is King.
Right.
So he gets back to the table and he talks about it, and then they're like, okay, we get to the Beast, we drive back to London, Andy drives us back because he's the only one that's sober, and you see him knocking back all of the 5 shots. And they go into the bathroom and they have this massive fight.
Yeah.
With these teenagers.
They're being replaced. People are being replaced.
Yeah, it's Invasion of the Pod people.
But it's not for a malicious reason. It's for a reason that they think they're trying to make us better. And it plays into this beautiful scene where they're all sitting at the table. And, what was his name? Was it Peter? The one that got bullied. Yeah, Peter.
Yeah.
He's sitting at the table, and this guy walks by, and he recognizes the guy as somebody who
bullied him mercilessly
and put him in the hospital.
Yeah.
And the guy does not remember him, and which makes it worse.
Yeah.
The fact that he went through this hell and the guy doesn't even know it. But it's not because he doesn't know it; it's because he's been replaced.
Right, and that wasn't a memory that was kept.
Right.
And it's beautiful. I love when they're in the woods and the bully's there and he's like, I'm sorry. I didn't, I was a dumb kid, and he just beats the hell out of him.
Right. Right.
It was kind of beautiful.
But all of this goes on, and it kind of reminded me of the first time I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
mm-hmm.
and the fact that the only way that they managed to survive the alien invasion is by getting drunk and putting alcohol in their system is the only way they can survive the being wiped out by the aliens.
Well, yeah, because you need to have alcohol in your system to beam,
right?
Or you'll get like a headache or something. It's.
But
that's a great book. I wish they had a movie that did that book justice.
But the situation keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And the worse it gets, the more determined they come to finishing the Golden Mile.
and that like everybody is aware of them.
Yeah.
And kind of helping them, but also kind of menacing them, and just the brilliant part of it is that essentially humans don't want to be made better
Oh, the ending
because they
speech.
want to be stupid.
The ending
And
speech, it reminds me of something my dad always told me. He said, people don't want to be told what to do.
yeah,
And that's what it is. It's like, we don't want to be made better. We want to be ourselves.
we want to get there on our own. If we're ever going to be better, we want to do it ourselves.
Right. But the whole thing
Because
at
we
the
want
end,
to.
when they're looking up and they're just saying, just start off. Just and they're drunk. They're just...
Oh, plastered. It's remarkable they remembered any of this happened.
But that whole scene at the end is just beautiful. It's wonderful. And then the pulse happens, and the part that I really did not expect is the aftermath. Because
that post-apocalyptic society of
again, the same thing as Shaun of the Dead. They're trying to figure out how. By the way, I love the scene where they're trying to figure out what to name them.
Yeah.
They're going to name them the blanks, and then somebody says it's
right.
Squishy Eggman. And they're all trying to figure out. But it comes down to the point where Andy's the one telling the story.
Yeah.
And he's sitting around one of the barrels, that he's telling the story to somebody. And why dystopian futures have to have burning barrels, I don't know. But anyway.
For heat.
Yeah. But
I love that then Gary, he was offered this eternal youth as a blank back in his old body, and with all of his compatriots. And
where did he get a longsword?
Shut up.
All of a sudden, he just produces a longsword. It's like...
I'm gonna say to you what Michael Bay said to Ben Affleck when he said, why are we having oil riggers get prepped for space travel instead of astronauts taught how to operate a drill? Shut the fuck up.
Gary's like the last guy in the world you want to have a longsword.
Well, yeah, but he's got these youthful versions of his friends, and he's still going around.
One thing I love is I love the fact that because at one point Oliver is overtaken.
Yes.
And they smash his head open.
And he's still talking.
Because
like this big bowl in his head.
Yeah, and eventually he replaces it with a soccer ball.
Yeah.
And he draws a face.
And he's still selling houses.
He's still selling houses. I think that's the last thing you see.
Well, I thought the last thing that you saw was Gary swinging the sword after his mechanique friends were denied service, Mos Eisley Cantina style.
I love this movie. God,
it is really, really good. I'm glad I rewatched it. I'm glad that you had had recommended that we add it.
Mm-hmm. Then we just had to throw in Hot Fuzz just because.
Well, yeah, because round out the Cornetto trilogy, and I was thinking about it. Hot Fuzz is its own kind of gory slasher murder movie.
Well, again, it's the first one's a zombie movie. The first one's a horror movie. The second one's an action movie, and the third one's sci-fi. So they're all representing different genres.
But they all have a horror element to them.
They all have a horror element and a lot of blood.
A lot of blood.
But yeah, I enjoyed these. I'm gonna have to watch them again.
And again and again and again. They hold up. They hold up
several times. But yeah, I'm glad you picked this. I'm glad we expanded it a little bit.
Yeah,
yeah. Because you really can't talk about just one of these.
No, because they're so brilliantly intertwined, yet literally have nothing to do with one another.
Now, the one thing that did disappoint me, is when Simon Pegg and Nick Frost got together without Edgar Wright, and they made a movie called Paul.
Yeah.
Which it needed Edgar Wright. It needed
did.
Edgar Wright because the movie, it's one of those, you can feel that it's getting there, but it just doesn't quite.
Well, yeah, and Edgar Wright is damn near brilliant. He was
Baby
the
Driver.
driving. He was Baby Driver was really good. Scott Pilgrim versus the World is a fun movie as long as you don't think about the implications that it's, the male domineering.
People liked it more than I did.
I enjoyed it. I've seen it once or twice.
I
think
get where
twice.
people liked it. I just was not a fan of that one.
I actually read a lot of the mangas too. My friend had them, and I borrowed them.
I thought it was mostly just style over substance.
Well, yeah, it was. It was a video game.
After I saw World's End.
Yeah.
That probably was not a good idea.
Probably not. And he was a driving force behind the first Ant-Man movie.
Was he? I didn't know that.
Yeah. He was originally attached to write and direct, and he is still credited for part of the screenplay. He was the reason that Ant-Man was getting made, and then he parted company over creative differences, apparently.
Yeah.
But they still kept... They did rewrite the script, but enough of it was still his that he retained a writing credit on it.
Also, one of the best, and it's a small contribution, but he directed one of the segments in Grindhouse.
Oh God, what is it? Don't. Oh, that's the best one.
Don't.
I love that little trailer.
Yeah, those little trailers that were in the,
more than I like virtually any other part of that movie.
Yeah.
And I Grindhouse was okay, but the little trailer Don't and
was it Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Were the two that were just phenomenal.
The funny thing is about those trailers, you have to see them with an audience.
Oh yeah.
To really get it. It's wonderful. I love Don't.
You have to know a little bit about 70s Grindhouse movies too.
Yeah. And you have to be able to appreciate the cheesiness of those trailers, because I remember there was one. What was the movie? Was it the Bob Clark movie called Black Christmas?
Mm-hmm.
And I love the narrator, because this is when trailers used to have narrators.
Right.
And the end of the trailer is so ridiculous because the narrator's like, "If this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight."
Yeah, there's
like that.
Yeah. So what kind of recommendations do you have based off of this?
I want to recommend a movie called The Boxtrolls.
That is such a good movie.
Simon Pegg and Nick Frost provided voices for that, and it's one of those movies you don't know if you want to see. You don't know you want.
Was Simon Pegg in that?
Yeah, both of them were.
Who did Simon Pegg play?
Crap. Hold on.
Because I know Nick Frost was one of the guys that rounded up, and Richard Iowade from the IT Crowd was his friend.
I could be wrong. Hold on. There were a lot of good. That was a really good movie.
That was a really good movie.
And again, it's one of those movies you don't know if you want to see it until you've seen it.
Yeah.
And I believe. Let's see, where is he?
I still can't believe that the villain was Ben Kingsley. It doesn't sound anything like Ben Kingsley.
Yeah, he was in it. Herbert Troshaw.
Oh, he was the father then.
Right.
Okay.
But that it's a. It reminds me a little bit of the kids' movies that I grew up with, like Willy Wonka. Movies that were not always so pleasant, and and safe for kids, and
Right.
It's a wonderful movie. I love it.
It is. It is really good. I would recommend. Horror comedies are weird because they either work or they just flat out don't.
Yeah.
I would recommend. It's funny you recommend a kids movie. I'm going to recommend one too. Coraline.
Coraline's disturbing.
Yes, it is. But it's brilliant. It's wonderful. It's funny that we're recommending kids movies, and all three of the movies that we just talked about are very, very hard R movies. There's, of course, the original, the best of the horror comedies. Of course, American Werewolf in London and Ghostbusters.
Which, the test of a horror comedy is, do they work separately?
Right.
Does it work as a comedy, and then does it work as a horror film? If either of those doesn't work, then it usually doesn't work. It's that's what Ghostbusters was. Ghostbusters was essentially a horror film.
Yeah.
Just with Bill Murray's things really on top of it.
So what do we have coming up?
Next week, we're going to mix it up. We are going to be talking about the Universal horror films. We're calling this our horror movie monster medley. If you've been with this show, back in January, we did a whole show on Frankenstein movies. So we're going to talk about the rest of the Universal horror monsters. We're going to talk about Dracula.
Yes.
Dracula's daughter.
That was Gilligan and the Skipper, and this is
right.
And the rest.
Dracula's daughter, which I dearly love. The Mummy, the Invisible Man, and the Wolfman.
I love the Invisible Man.
I love all of these for different
They
reasons.
are. Yeah.
I love them all. I love how. I love sitting there and breaking apart these movies that are 80, 90 years old.
Yeah.
And like, it's so ridiculous. It's like it's a lot of fun.
It is. It is. And this is the first time we'll be talking about Dracula. I do not say blah blah blah. Sorry, that's a Hotel Transylvania reference, and I'm so sorry.
There's your good horror comedy. One of the only movies I can tolerate Adam Sandler.
That's true. Wait till you get to the third one. Anyway, I had planned before you gave. Then you said the horror movie medley. I was going to recommend doing Dracula. So Dracula, Nosferatu, Todd Browning's, the Spanish language one, and Bram Stoker's Dracula. I just saw
the Spanish language one.
Isn't it good?
We may talk about that one in conjunction.
That is so good. I got to see that in the theater.
Yeah, I saw Dracula in the theater.
It was Halloween. It was paired. It was Dracula and the Spanish language one.
I saw it without subtitles, and it was still good.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I at least saw it with subtitles.
It's the same movie.
Yeah. Well, there are differences. But anyway, that had been my idea to kind of piggyback it off of the Frankenstein and Hunchback, and get to talk about Francis Ford Coppola's last great movie, and as well as Nosferatu, and Werner Herzog's remake of Nosferatu from 78 or 79, the German one. Oh God, that's a good one. So that might come up next year.
Well, we're going to end this thing the week after with the Night of the Living Dead, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary.
Yes.
Its director died just this past year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting.
And it was shot in my neck of the woods.
In your neck of the woods. And it's not shot like almost any other horror film I've ever seen in my life.
Well, first of all, it has a black lead character, which was revolutionary for 1968.
And of course, the black guy dies at the end.
Hey, it's better than every other horror movie where they die at the first person.
This is true. All right, take us home.
All right. We thank you very much for joining us here on the Pod Bay Doors. You can find all of our back episodes on www.thepodbaydoorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can throw a tip into our virtual tip jar on Patreon at pod_bay. You can find us on Twitter also at pod_bay. I thank you very much for joining us once again, and the pod bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.
All down the street, they're standing in line with white lipstick and one thing on their mind. Hey, little freak with the lunch pail purse, underneath the paint, you're just a little girl dancing at the zombie zoo. Dancing at the zombie zoo. Painted in a corner, and all you wanna do is dance down at the zombie zoo. Cute little dropout, how come you back a ride? Is your mother in a clinic? Is your father got no job? Sometimes you're so impulsive, you shaved off all your hair. You look like Boris Karloff, and you don't even care. You're dancing at the zombie zoo. Dancing at the zombie zoo. Painted in a corner, and all you wanna do is dance down at the zombie zoo. She disappears at sunrise, I wonder where she goes until the night comes falling down again. You show up with your friends half alive, dancing at the zombie zoo. Dancing at the zombie zoo. Well, you can make a big impression or go through life unseen. You might wind up restricted and over 17. It's so hard to be careful, so easy to be led. Somewhere beyond the pavement, you'll find the living dead. Dancing at the zombie zoo. Dancing at the zombie zoo. Painted in a corner, and all she wants to do is dance down at the zombie zoo. She disappears at sunrise.